Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Ask Me Anything session. My name is Danielle Larigi, and I'm a Senior Developer Advocate at Salesforce. And I'm really excited to announce my co-host and guest, Greg Whitworth. Hello, Greg.
How's it going? How's everybody doing?
It's going great. Let me make you a little bit bigger there. There you go.
There we go. Yeah. How are you doing? It's been a bit.
I am doing great today. We had the most weirdest weather the last week here in Dallas, where actually yesterday it was like 92 degrees. And then today I went to walk my dog and it was 38 this morning. I know.
For all the international watchers, we're talking Fahrenheit, obviously.
Yeah, Fahrenheit.
It's Celsiusly melting off the face of the
Thank
sun.
you.
Wait, I actually missed we should put the jazz back in the background because I got some like light drizzle outside. I've got my nice warm tea. Outside Seattle, it's always, nice and chilly. So I didn't have 90-degree weather yesterday, so it's quite comfortable.
I'm sorry. I felt when I was walking around and it was like 80s and 90s for like a week straight with no rain and just sunshine in February. I thought about the rest of, the United States and how they're probably cold and freezing and chilly. So I thought about you. And then this morning I walked out with just this Trailblazer hoodie on and I'm like, ooh, I need a jacket to walk the dogs. I came right back.
Oh goodness, yeah. That's standard fare around here, but at least we don't have snow, which is good.
That's true. And hello to everyone. I see we have some greetings here from Norway. Awesome. And let me show this. Greetings from Norway.
Woo.
Yay! Tuning in all the way from Norway. And we also have someone here from California. Hi, Anne from California. So hopefully California is very warm. And we also have Niket here. He said, hello. Hi, Niket. Faithful watcher over there. And he also said hi to you, Greg, as well. And even, we're all around the world today. London, UK.
I'm drinking tea, London. There we go.
I usually have a cup of tea, but I'm gonna have to bring my cup of tea to the next stream because I didn't get a chance to make it before this stream. I have water. Staying hydrated though on the stream.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
And we have some other from the UK. Hope to see you all at either World Tour London or London's Calling. And we also have another person on from India. Hello to India.
Thanks for staying up.
Yeah, I think it might be pretty late.
Good evening. Yeah, good evening.
Thanks for staying up. And is there anything that you would like to tell us about yourself, Greg?
Yeah, so I'm a senior director of product on the platform side. Span everything from LWC, LWR, work on a bunch of different stuff with a bunch of wonderful colleagues and engineers, and which we'll get into a little bit later. And get to work with all of you all on it's very interesting not being able to see everybody's faces. I'm glad we have the little avatars at least. But getting to work with meet with a bunch of customers and devs, and that's what we'll really be talking about today is like that feedback and how we can continue to improve building on the Salesforce platform.
Yes. And I'm really excited about our topic today. It's Lightning Web Components. If you didn't check the title, we're talking all about LWC. So you have the ability to ask your questions right in chat on either YouTube or on LinkedIn, since we are simulcasting today. So ask your questions in chat, and we'll be pulling your questions from chat as long as they're on LWC. Remember, the topic today is LWC.
I mean, you can ask other things. I just want to know the answers. So that's fine.
Our expert is here for LWC, so we want to make sure that we're asking him LWC questions. And Greg, will you be going to TDX?
Oh, yeah. And I'll also be like teeing up stuff for sure. I don't want to spoil too much from next week's stuff. So yeah, but I'll be teeing up stuff. So hopefully I'll also be at the booth, at LWC booth. So yeah, come by and see me if you happen to be there.
Awesome. So, all right. We'll give you guys a little bit of time to start thinking about those questions and typing your questions in. But in the meantime, we have a very familiar looking thing that we have to show. You're already laughing.
Well, memorize.
Looking statement. So remember to make all of your purchasing decisions based off of what is available in the system today and not based off of anything that I or our expert may be saying it might be coming to LWC or any feature enhancements. Please make sure that you make all your purchasing decisions based off of what is available in the system today. We love that. We love our forward-looking statement, don't we?
Yes, we do. It means I can say anything.
Okay.
I'm joking.
So, Greg, how would you like to kick this off? You want to kick this off? I believe you have a presentation for us.
Yeah. Hopefully a short one so that we can get to all the good questions that you all have, and then set the stage.
So. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a look at this presentation. There we go. Take it away.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So, quick shout out. Definitely go join the dev community if you already aren't there. A lot of us hang out there. We go there. We love to answer questions, get feedback. One of the things I actually love about it is a lot of you all are there too, because you guys help come answer questions as well and usually provide insights and maybe different approaches to solving problems that maybe we wouldn't have thought of, which is always great to see. And then we've already gone over this, so I don't need to go over this slide. But just in case you did mention, hey, the title is LWC, I do think it's probably worth, just in case if somebody happens to be here, this happens a lot at the booths that we see. People are just now discovering LWC. So I really quickly wanted to just kind of come in here and be like, what is LWC? Why did we create LWC? You may have only been working with Visualforce or Aura, but LWC is Lightning Web Components. You'll often hear us just say LWC. But basically, we built it around web standards. And so there's something called web components. Basically, we very much follow that paradigm. If you're used to other frameworks, maybe Svelte or Lit or something like that, it's very similar. But by leveraging those web standards, we get really great performance from the browser because we let the browser do the majority of the heavy lifting. It also makes them so that they're super portable and compatible to use. And then also on top of that, they also work side by side with Aura and if you're in the Lightning experience. So we wanted to create that basically as our future framework moving forward that developers could use and reduce that on-ramp. But what is the point of today's talk? Like, I really wanted to talk about, hey, what does the future of LWC look like? And that's why I'm stoked about the AMA is because I would love for everybody on the call to be like, if you had a crystal ball, like what would the future look like? And so one of the things that we did last year is we were kind of like, we always do the, hey, what is the, building on Salesforce survey. And, a lot of us colleagues were getting together and we were kind of like, we would love to go like one layer deeper on that. So we actually sent out the State of LWC 2023 survey. And before we dig into too much of the meat, I kind of wanted to first show like the demographics. So we had over 500 respondents, that they use Salesforce and develop with Lightning Web Components from all across, very similar to our mega here, all across the world, from all varying sizes of companies. And then also you all use a broad swath of products from Salesforce. It's not just Sales Cloud or Service Cloud or Experience Cloud. It's all over the map. And then on top of that, you wanted to know, hey, what projects do you guys work on? The majority of you all said that you work on web applications, which isn't necessarily surprising, but we do have, DevOps, some people building desktop applications, services, and so on. So really, really, really broad set of people building with Lightning Web Components, all have their own different needs from the framework itself. One of the key questions as a product owner is what we're doing right? Or are we building the right thing? And one of the key ways in which you measure that is customer satisfaction. And so prior to working on the platform, you had Visualforce, you had Aura, and now you have Lightning Web Components. And so what we wanted to do is we said, how satisfied are you with those three different frameworks? And out of 5, LWC by far was the winner here. The thing is, though, is like, well, everyone, like one point, you're just like, sweet, yes, we're doing great. Well, for one, it's not 5. So we got room for improvement. That means there's gaps here. The second is that Aura is the lowest. It's at 2.7 down here in customer satisfaction. And the thing that this kind of like, I would say, kind of gave us a little bit of a friction is the fact that we know a lot of people, unfortunately, still have to reach for Aura. And so that was one of the key things we wanted to dig into is because, so while we're seeing great customer satisfaction for LWC, if you have to reach for Aura, that means your customer satisfaction is then going down. And so we asked this, and we got this great quote. For all I know, this person is on the call today. But basically, it's feature parity. Like, hey, I don't want to reach for Aura, but there's key gaps missing in Aura that I have to go use feature gaps in LWC, so I have to go use Aura. And this is somebody that's got more than enough experience with Salesforce, so they're not brand new, that type of thing. But they're just basically saying it's gaps. And this bared out in when we asked just in buckets, hey, everybody, why do you use it? So that was a quote, but now here's just in a quantitative statement of, hey, it's, the capability gaps. And then can you improve the ROI and tooling? And so on. So there's we're trying to be super transparent on how you all feel about the framework. And so when we asked about, hey, what are the top gaps? We got, support for third party. Hey, you know what? There aren't the same Experience Cloud templates for, in an LWC context that there are for Aura. Then, hey, there's refresh view isn't supported. So we then followed that up with a more specific question. If you said, hey, it was capabilities, okay, what are they? What are the top ones? Dynamic components, workspace API, lightning actions, PDF exports, so on. I won't read out every single one of them. But this is what's great, is spring 2024, dynamic components, GA. Workspace API, spring 24, GA. So we took off those top two items that were requested. And then we also said, okay, on top of this, what are the things you guys want to focus on? If you could ask the LWC team to focus on anything, what would it be? And we basically initially created this list based on our other customer engagements. Dynamic components, again, at the top of the list. Then state management, which is a really interesting one, was second, with local development coming in third, which we'll get into in a minute, a little bit later, which isn't super surprising. But again, I don't want to give away too much for next week, but there's dynamic components delivered in spring 2024. So that one's given, but state management is being heavily looked at by the LWC team. And we're doing a ton of cross-cloud initiatives. So at Salesforce, we call clouds, right? So we have numerous teams across the company working on an entirely new experience for local development that I can't wait for people to hear and see about. And this is the one that actually just, in all honesty, bugs me, and why that local development is super, super important and continuing to improve the developer experience. Is this is just terrible for us to say that 43% of developers are spending 1 to 5 hours debugging LWCs. That's just not acceptable, and it's something that we need to drive down. So continuing to improve our tooling and stuff is super important. And on that note, this is basically what we ended up seeing is hey, how important are these various things to you, and then also how satisfied are these various tooling capabilities to you. And when you do opportunity scoring, effectively, local dev pops out drastically. That it's super important, but they're very dissatisfied with it. So it's a very strong indication to us that we need to invest time there. So as you can see, we've got browser dev tools, we've got the Salesforce CLI. A lot of interest and a lot of also satisfaction. There are some areas, for example, like UTAM down here, there isn't as much awareness. So there is areas, hey, we can increase awareness around the unit testing that and the page objects that UTAM brings. But the majority of them actually are in a decent state outside of that local development if there is awareness for it. So what were our key takeaways? So efficiency, very, very, very top of mind. We really need to drive down that number of debugging. And it's a multi-pronged approach. There isn't any one thing. But ultimately, we need to make it so that it's a great developer experience and that we're able to make it so that they can see their changes as quickly as possible, make it so that they can trust what they're deploying to their org. And quickly, even if they're able to quickly do that, they have the necessary warnings and capabilities to fix the bugs that they hit. Increase adoption. So this kind of goes back to those feature capabilities. We need to continue to fill those gaps. Many of them are actually in the works. And so I'm actually super excited about next week, and Grisha will be giving a talk on some of those items and speaking to them. And then finally, a lot of folks are building for mobile different form factors. So our mobile team is heavily looking into, okay, what additional tooling can we put in place for when you're building your Lightning Web components with a mobile form factor in mind, so that you can test your various Nimbus plugins and capabilities to use native controls within your LWCs. And then finally, I feel like I've hit on this one numerous times, but we really need to continue to heavily invest in our tooling to provide a great developer experience. And so like with that, it's a quick summation, and I think it's probably an interesting question for people to ask of like, what is the future of Lightning Web Components? And that's like kind of where I kind of want this really be a fireside chat with everybody, is because in all honesty, it truly depends on what you all say. Because hopefully, as you all saw that list, we delivered your top 2 asks, and we're continuing to work down that. And that's where, again, I don't want to necessarily take away from what people will be presenting at TDX. But I do want everybody, we now have the 2024 survey out. So please go take it. As like, again, as a product owner, like we take this and then we leverage this to say, hey, this is where we should go invest our time, because it's ultimately going to drive key success metrics for the company and make you all successful, so that we can see that to fruition. So thank you for bearing with my 10-minute slide talk. And I think now's the time we open the floor, but please, go take the survey, and I'll try to answer as many questions as I can.
That was really, really insightful. I mean, at least LWC is scoring higher than Visualforce.
Yeah, that was it's way higher actually, which is good.
That's good. We're moving in a positive direction. That's what I'm seeing here. And I think, how cool is it that you can take a survey and that people will actually, implement changes based off of the feedback in your survey, and you can actually see, the changes come to fruition. So I think that's really cool that your team is doing this for the community.
Well, and on top of that, there's one in there, like if you all are open to it. At the very end, it actually asks if we can reach out. Like we do want to set up like, hey, here's, our designs, can you provide feedback on them early before we even start shipping them out? So yeah, it's super exciting.
Awesome. All right. So I see that the questions have started to roll in from both YouTube and LinkedIn. So I just want to say we had a little bit of a mishap with some of the links today for the LinkedIn, the YouTube event. So if you have the link and you are on this stream and you see a friend struggling to get on this stream, please help them out with what the correct link is, so that they can join in on the party and join in on the fun too. And so they can also benefit from this stream and get their questions asked and answered. And for those of you that are currently on the stream, again, thank you for coming to the stream. I'm going to check the chat before we hop into the questions, just to see if there's any comments. Again, Christy is doing amazing getting all of your questions consolidated for me to be able to ask Greg. So just checking the chat to see if there's any more shout outs. And looks like I don't see anything. I see a few of highs to everyone. So, but again, thank you all for joining us. Now let's get over to these questions. So first question, you ready for it, Greg?
Sure.
Okay. And I'm going to just hide this for a second and bring back our faces to the background. All right, first question. Do you think, this comes from Lindenberg Venancio, and it's coming from LinkedIn. We have a lot of people on here, so I'm not able to find this specifically in the chat. But sure. The question is, do you think that in the future, LWC will be replaced by flex cards and OmniScripts?
That's an interesting question. I don't think it would be replaced, because so many of the things ultimately compile down to either Apex or LWC, depending on what you're building. They actually are like an abstraction layer on top. I think another, like, thinking of the future of how people develop on the platform and build with LWC is an interesting question, like especially when you start thinking of like the various Einstein for developers type things. I think the future of how we build components will continue to evolve. I think LWC will still be ultimately what is produced, but I'm sure we'll continue to make it so, which OmniScripts and Flex cards helps with, making it simpler and more approachable for anybody to go build those components for their various use cases.
Awesome. And thanks for that question, Lindenberg. All right, our next question also comes from LinkedIn, and it is from Todd Halfpenny. Here we go. Also staying up late for us from the UK. A starter from me around the parity with Aura. Do we have an ETA for things like Canvas support for LWC?
Oh goodness. So no, we don't currently have I'm on numerous threads about Canvas. We don't currently have a replacement plan for Canvas. And so it's kind of where it's at. Like, being fully transparent. There's nothing currently on the roadmap to replace Canvas and improve it. And so please provide the use cases where you're having to reach for Canvas and the roadblocks you're hitting. Again, in that survey, that's where it can be very valuable, or on the the Trailblazer community, because we can then start putting those use cases together to figure out how we would approach a cohesive solution for that.
All right. Thank you for that answer, Greg. Let's go ahead and get rid of this one. And we have our first question from YouTube. We have Niket over here on YouTube. And the question is there a plan to add a state management library in LWC?
Yeah. So basically that's good. That's kind of what I was trying to tease and kind of really hopefully support people going and taking the 2024 survey, is that the team bid on that, and they've been investigating like what that should look like, what the use cases are. There's even discussions around, hey, well, technically, there's data state management, and there's of course state management for the components themselves in various states. And then how does that play with the Lightning messaging service and those types of things? So I would say there's primarily investigations at this point. Like when we get closer to actually having concrete design and solutions, again, we'll start surfacing it more broadly. But yes, there it is on the roadmap, and we're actively working on design towards it. Hopefully that sums it up well.
Thanks for that answer. And we have another question that's coming in from LinkedIn. And this one is from Peter Churchill. He says, a big gap for me is cross-object fields in LWC data tables. This is already starting off really good. For example, displaying account name requires some manipulation. Any plans to support that?
I think I would have to see the use case a little bit more straightforward. That said, this is where I'll give a shout out to Maeve and our wonderful Lightning-based components team. They have completely reworked data tables, which should be coming out in the near future. So it's one of those things where it's like, hopefully that maybe helps in that scenario. Again, I would have to kind of see the code and the various use cases. I don't doubt that it feels like they're doing some type of property bag, having to match them up. But I don't have a concrete answer to that specific question.
Awesome. So just as a reminder to some of those, I see some people joining us new on the stream. If you have a question, the way that it works here on AMA is you just type it into the chat if you're on YouTube, or type it on the chat if you're on LinkedIn. And we have some amazing people from our dev marketing team on stream, and they will get all those questions consolidated for me to be able to ask our expert, Greg. All right. Let's take a look at the next question, which comes in from YouTube. And this is a good question. This question is, what practices do you recommend for LWC? What best practices do you recommend?
Oh, goodness gracious. We literally have one of our architects that literally has given 30-minute talks on this, and it's literally just best practices on performance. So I think there's a lot of best practices we could go over. If I was going to start, I would probably say, this kind of depends on where your capability is with coding. If you're new to it, definitely go take the trail of web components. It also even has a trail within there of if you're an Aura developer coming to LWC. But heavily lean on our recipes. So if you go to lwc.dev, there's a tab that says recipes. We update that as new features roll out. So like the workspace API, dynamic components, there will be great examples within there. Mohit, one of your colleagues, produces a lot as well in that space. So usually they're heavily vetted by the team. But basically, I try to do as little as possible. I think this is pretty common in coding. Like the less code is actually the better. And so it's one of those things where the less that you can do ultimately improves the user experience, in my opinion. So like both from a design perspective, but also from like a performance perspective. So the less code that we're having to execute, I don't want to get too in the weeds on how the browser works, but basically the better in performance. So only add API if you truly need it to be property bound. Like only add the necessary things for the user experience that your customer is having. Again, that's such a broad question. Again, we could have a talk on great design for LWC components. Ironically, I did see somebody ask if I have a talk. Me and Pierre Marie, who was an architect on LWC, is I forget what the session name is, but it's like building components with style, which is going over all new CSS capabilities that you can use with LWCs. But yeah, great question. Could be like a 2-hour half-day session, though, we could probably spend on.
Don't forget, Greg will be at a booth at TDX and walking around TDX. So if you're going to TDX, it's a great time to ask Greg all these questions. And if you haven't registered yet, there's still room for more people to attend TDX. So make sure that you are registering for TDX. All right. Our next question comes from Siva Prasad. And this question is, are there any plans to write functional components instead of old class components like React? Comes from YouTube.
So not currently in plans that I'm aware of. Again, this is kind of where I would want to go back to, like, what are the, when they say instead of old class components like React, are they saying they want functional components that are like React, or that they don't like using class, which is how like React's class components are created? So the use case would be interesting for me to better understand that direct ask, because we've also had other folks that not only just like from functional or class perspective, but declarative as well. But there's nothing concretely on the backlog of changing how you're building out, you're creating your Lightning Web Component. It extends from that. And it's important to know that's how standard web components work. Like, you go build, if you set aside LWC, you go create a ES class and you extend HTML element. So that's how native web components work. That's why LWC is built the way it is. So I would want to understand what the use case is to determine whether or not we would pivot in any meaningful sense.
Great answer. Thank you for that, Greg. And here's a really, really interesting question coming up, which is, will there be a major change in the role of the developer after Einstein?
So that's almost like a meta question across the industry, not even just Salesforce. I actually was messing around with it, and actually I think it's more of an efficiency thing more than anything, at least at this stage. And I think that applies for all of us, whether we're writing documents or having to set up different permissions and stuff of that, where Einstein helps out in our day-to-day. It was just, it's funny that this question was asked, but I actually was like, let me just see what it can do. And I'll just go in there and say, hey, go build me an LWC component that can have a pick list that fires a toast event, and 20 seconds later, here it is. Now, I was kind of intrigued at some of the decisions it made. So it doesn't disappear, but I was like, it did what I needed, but for whatever reason, it threw it in a lightning card, whatever. So it's like, so I think it's more of an efficiency thing than anything. You'll just be like, hey, this is my use case. And you'll be able to quickly, whip up a, LWC component, modify it to meet your needs. That's a great question. And yeah, I'm super excited about the future of what that looks like, rather than constantly spinning up boilerplate code.
Yeah, I think there's always this interesting thing where people keep asking, like, is AI going to take over development? And I don't think it's going to take it over necessarily, but I think it's going to be a new tool in the developer's toolbox that they can use, right?
Yeah, at least for the short time, for sure. I mean, I don't know 20 years from now what it looks like. Who knows?
We don't know what anything looks like 20 years from now, but
exactly.
I think it's good. It's good, and it's going to definitely, I think it's going to help a lot of beginners, especially where there were a little bit harder barriers to entry into programming. I think that beginners are going to find it a little bit easier because they're going to have, an assistant, where previously all they could ask was their senior developer, the question. They'll have another tool to ask. All right. So we have another question from Niket here. And the question is there a plan to add or document generation capacity from LWC?
This is, I appreciate this question. We've actually probably, I've almost been at Salesforce for 4 years. I feel like we've debated this one every single release, because of the fact that ultimately people do want documentation auto generation for their components, especially if their ISVs are putting them into a package that's going somewhere else, so people can easily. It right now is not on the short-term roadmap, but thank you for raising it again. All of these types of signals are very valuable for a product to help lay the foundation in the direction that we go.
And we did have a follow-up comment on that from Ram Singh. And our chat is a very active chat right now. So I'm struggling just a little bit to find all of these in our chat. But Ram Singh said we need capability to create documents from LWC. Says VF has, and I'm assuming VF is Visualforce, has lots of limitations due to the old PDF rendering engine.
Yeah, which way are you saying that this one is from? The I'm trying to read it. This is the one from Ram?
Yes, Ram Singh.
Yeah. So the PDF question, likewise, you saw it on the list. We're not actively working on producing a solution to replace the PDF capability in this moment that I'm aware of. I could be proved wrong. Salesforce is a large company. But we are not actively, LWC specifically is not looking into that. But it is a common request, and it still is in our 2024 survey. So please go continue, because again, that does help set the stage for us going and investigating replacing those capabilities.
All right. Thank you for that, Ram, that follow-up question/comment. All right. So our next question is coming back.
Uh-oh. Everybody lost Danielle as well, not just me, right? I'm looking at the chat. Okay. I will go on to the next question then. So I can do this. No worries. So the next one was from Kenneth Sorensen from LinkedIn. So anything new on LWC OSS and LWR worth knowing about? So LWC OSS is basically our first place that things land that actually ends up going onto the platform. So there isn't anything necessarily going to be new on LWC in OSS that isn't making its way to the platform that we're talking about. As it relates to LWR, there's a lot of new things that are going into LWR. One of the things that I'm closely working on is that talked about at Dreamforce is Experience Delivery Pilot, which basically takes advantage of server-side rendering APIs that are in LWC that you all can uplift your components for digital experience sites to ultimately make it so that you're able to make it so your load time is remarkably fast, which ultimately improves your success metrics, whether it's revenue, case deflection, doesn't really matter. LWR continues to add more and more out-of-the-box components for customers for the LWR templates, and continue to improve and make optimizations on performance, as well as functional capabilities in the declarative sense within the Experience Builder. Again, I don't want to take too much away from what people will be announcing next week, but yeah, there's a lot of new things to talk about. But LWC OSS itself, we land things there and it usually makes its way into the platform. So it's not necessarily unique in that sense. So the next one is from Marcus Roberto from YouTube. What is the best way to display a list of LWC lookup fields for editing? Using Lightning editing form, one request per item is made to the server. It seems to be very inefficient. This is a good question. Again, this is kind of one of those things where it's I feel like I would need to see the use case. So if you want to hop over, feel free to tag me, and then we can kind of all dogpile on go over to the Trailblazer forum. Tag me, shoot me the link, and then usually I can rally a bunch of folks. Because to your point of inefficient, is it primarily asking from, and feel free to say in the chat whether I'm correct or not, whether or not is it from a DX perspective? Hey, I'm having to type this too often, or are you talking about from a performance perspective? Because then we would want to do some type of tracing or something of that nature. Danielle's back. I'm done being a fake Danielle and doing a terrible job at it. But basically, we would want to do some profiling to actually know whether or not it is actually a negative performance problem unless you're talking primarily from a developer experience problem, which you could potentially abstract away, depending on which question you're actually asking there.
Sorry about that.
Okay, cool. I'll pass it off to you. Yeah, oh, no worries. No worries whatsoever. So we're on to a question from Kenneth. If you're able to.
Yeah, I am.
All right, cool.
From me?
Like you're breaking up still.
There we go. I had to remove my other self from here. What about now? Good.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
It's almost like, like if you're a Marvel fan, like I was like how you're in the universe twice and you see like your multiverse self. Thank you for being a host. I don't know what's going on today, but thank you so much for being.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Almost like never happens to me.
The show will go on.
the show went on. So thank you for that, and thank you for which questions you did answer. So we already hit Ram Singh and Kenneth Sorson. Did we hit Siva Prasad's question about?
Well, no, we haven't actually done Kenneth's yet. That was the next one.
Okay. Thank you. So Kenneth's question, it comes from Kenneth asks, would there also be some native support in LWC due to user metrics? And currently they are using Amplitude to help them understand their users.
So this is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking it. Yes, this is a great question. So there are investigations on that we're working with from across the entire. I always say across all of Salesforce, but Salesforce has so many things. So Lightning Experience and digital experiences on basically making it so that you can get some of the different capabilities that you would reach for, such as Amplitude, or if you think of like Google Analytics or something of that nature, something that, because we can't necessarily just, and I saw some chats talking about LWS, we can't allow just complete DOM traversal within the Lightning experience. We are looking at trying to add in a user metric so people can understand the solutions that they're building. This is early days. It will, how it ultimately surfaces itself, because we have different analytics tools, of course, we have to figure that out. Then on top of that, what user metrics? I think it's a great one to follow up once there's a better plan, but I do know teams are investigating it, looking into it. But nothing concrete to share on the roadmap. And it technically isn't LWC itself. It'll be some other type of solution, right? But so that's why I don't have a really great answer for you. But it's a good question.
That was a good answer, though. So thank you for that answer. And please introduce TypeScript for LWC instead of JavaScript. That comes from Siva Prasad.
I like that it's not a question. It's just like a do this. So good thing to know. Again, go take the I'm going to sound like a broken record. Go take the 2024 LWC survey. Ironically, I literally actually, just in case, I actually had seeded is the wrong term, but had prepped for if somebody asked about TypeScript. So TypeScript is being investigated. We're starting more internally than externally, because in order for anybody that's used TypeScript, I presume Siva has. TypeScript is only valuable if the rest of the platform has typed itself. It has actual types. So LWC supporting TypeScript, I don't think is a massive undertaking. It's more of, does the rest of the platform actually meaningfully support TypeScript to where you can then take advantage of those type systems and thus, successfully fail, rather than literally everything being type any. So it's not a small undertaking to meaningfully have it support TypeScript.
Thank you for that question, Siva Prasad, and thank you for that answer, Greg.
Yep.
The next question that we have comes from LinkedIn. Todd Halfpenny again. Any advice on how we can request support for native APIs such as WebShare, Bluetooth, etc. on mobile devices?
So this is a great question. I will give you technically two answers. One is definitely reach out to Sue Berry. She'll have the best. So she's a product owner on mobile at Salesforce. Sure, you can find her on LinkedIn. again, throw it on the Trailblazer community and shoot it over to me, and I'll make sure that she jumps on there. The other thing is many of these APIs are available just via JavaScript, but in like a PWA context, so the web share and Bluetooth are all standard API libraries. As you know, LWCs are running just JavaScript. So technically you have access to these APIs. Now, whether or not they successfully work within the mobile device completely depends upon what the context in which you're running. Are you running within a native app? At that point, they probably need to be using a native component or native API in order for it to be work. And that's where I would look to sue. It'd be like, hey, do you guys already have like a sharing component or something like that that auto converts on publish that LWC component to leverage those native APIs? Or within a web view, let's say you're doing your digital experience site, but I'm on mobile. They should work if the browser that the user happens to be using on said device supports those capabilities. I do know certain browsers, won't name names, don't necessarily support like Bluetooth, for example. So it's one of those things that would depend on your use case, what your browsers are primarily using, and that would, I think, inform your decision. But it actually isn't an LWC thing blocking you, if that makes sense. So sorry, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully it helps you out, Todd, hopefully.
That was a great answer, though, and thank you for that. And we have a question from Giovanni Olivares again. Are you thinking of creating a CSS animation library? That would be cool.
Yeah, there's actually been discussions about that, and like that was actually one of the feature asks that we had in the past, because we've seen that kind of take off really well in like SvelteKit and others, where you can just add a few classes and you get great animations. So again, going back to our like efficiency perspective, again, it all comes back to, hey, what are the major things that you all want us to spend our time and focus on that has the largest impact for everybody? So while it's cool, it doesn't rank really high because there's like usually people are okay saying, hey, I'll set my own transitions in CSS. Why don't you go fill this Aura gap, or hey, build the PDF doc system or something of that nature over the animation library. But yeah, it would be fun to work on. Also, I'd be curious what our design system teams are actively working on. They may be somebody likewise that could step in and potentially fill that gap as well.
Thank you for that question, Giovanni. And we have another question coming from YouTube from Harshit Goyal. And there is open source provide a state management.
Just FYI, you broke up a little bit, but basically the question is, yeah, the library LWC Redux, is it a good so we've seen people use it. Like we've also seen people struggle with using it. Like there's the roadblocks. I can't recall off the top of my head. It's probably been about a year or so since I've looked at folks what the issues they're hitting with the Redux library, the LWC OSS version of Redux, the issues that they're hitting. So you can use it, but I also know that it necessarily isn't as straightforward as possible. And we lost Danielle again, and I have no idea how to remove the question, but I'll just keep moving forward. Oh, there she is. She's back. Okay.
I'm still here. I just put you on.
Okay. Sorry, you freaked me out again for a second. So okay, cool. So yeah, so basically you can use it, but it's one of those things where it's kind of like you use it at your own risk, sort of thing, because it isn't officially supported.
So I prepared for things like this. So I have 2 Wi-Fi networks.
There you go. That's smart.
So I could flip back and forth if one goes down. So occasionally I'll just like flip back to the better one.
Yeah.
But the next question is from David Cohen, also on LinkedIn. He said he missed the start of the call. That's okay. You missed our introductions about ourselves. And actually, Greg had reminded me, he was like, is it okay to bring up your vacation? I completely forgot we had a talk about that. But I had, we'll save that for the end for those of you that want to know a little bit about my vacation and what happened. But that's all you missed was, of course, our amazing introductions about ourselves, David. And then also Greg went through a LWC presentation. And that's a great call out for some of the rest of you that might have missed the beginning, because I know there's a little bit of a mishap with the links. This is completely recorded. So we will be posting this to YouTube as well as LinkedIn after the call. So no worries there. So he says, maybe this was answered. What the heck happened to LWC local development server?
That is an awesome question, and I could probably spend 14 minutes on it. But basically, interestingly enough, there should have been, hopefully I don't get in too much trouble for this, but Ananya said that they'll officially be releasing I think it was this past Monday, the deprecation announcement of that. And basically what happened is it was a great idea. It was put in a decent position, and then, got to beta, and then kind of got put into, what's the term I'm looking for? Basically maintenance mode is what it got put into. And that is actually what we leveraged a lot of the feedback on that, in addition to the survey, in addition to meetings with customers, that led to, so hopefully this person, if they missed the beginning of the thing, they missed the presentation of, we now have numerous teams across the company working together to produce a complete end-to-end solution that replaces local dev server. Because basically it was doing a very small piece, but there were so many gaps because people would be like, okay, I actually want to take that component and quickly test it in the live org environment without having to deploy the code to, like, how can we make that happen? So we're actually kind of starting from scratch as potentially the wrong term, but we want to provide a holistic and cohesive across the company solution, not necessarily just like a single individual LWC type prep playground. So I'm super stoked about that. There's a lot of teams working on it, some great design and prototypes in the works, and you'll actually get a tease of that next week. So I'm like super stoked about that one.
Thanks for that answer. And I'm super stoked about it too.
Yeah.
So the next question is, are there any plans to give support for React or similar with LWC? We often need to duplicate our work to both support our LWC and React developers. And this is coming from Kenneth Sorensen.
Yeah, again, a really great question. So a few things like on this. I don't think, for example, that in the next 6 months you're going to get an announcement where all of Lightning experience is moving to React, kind of thing. That said, we did introduce last year mixed mode, which basically makes it so that your LWC component can contain a native web component. Most component libraries these days can actually export out to native web components. It's also worth noting that React now, with their support for native custom elements, it makes it so that, again, that portability of native web components, you start getting to take advantage of. That said, there's also discussions that we're having because you're not the only one that says this. And by the way, a lot of, like, you're bringing up React, we have people bring up Ember, Angular, so it's a common problem. And that's kind of why we were mentioning the native web components, because that is the one thing that everybody's, because it's standard, everybody can kind of move towards and at least export to. But one thing that we're in discussions with is what we kind of refer to as kind of composable, and a potential hybrid approach of, like, hey, in this aspect, I heavily want to lean into the investments that our company has made in Angular, what have you, when we go to this route on a page. But hey, in this one, yeah, we'll build those in LWCs to take advantage of the Salesforce platform in this scenario. But hey, over in this other scenario, we'll maybe be heavily leveraging React, and we'll be using GraphQL and REST APIs. There are things, though, like state management is a good example, and I understand that's primarily like Redux or some type of next layer that people are leveraging. But if there are capabilities within React you really would like to see in LWC, that maybe makes that migration a little bit easier. Because again, I don't see us just completely going away with it, nor introducing like micro front ends for those different types of things within Lex or Lightning Experience. Please feel free to shout them out in that survey at the end. Here are the things that I want. When we ask, what do you guys want? Provide more feedback. Please provide that. So that's the question. Probably not a great answer because it really depends on the use case again. But yeah.
All right. And we have another question here that comes in from LinkedIn from Christopher Camel. And that question is, are there any plans to rework enhancing the Lightning data table component?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to, so if you happen to miss earlier, yeah, the Lightning-based component team is reworking on it. Like, their release dates I can't speak to them. I'm sure that the Lightning-based components team will be, some of them will be at TDX. It's a great question to ask them because they own that component. But I do know that they are reworking it. Release dates I can't speak to.
All right. Thank you for that question, Christopher.
Yeah.
Our next question will be Deepak Kumar. Will it be made? I hope I'm answering this. I'm going to ask as best as I can. Will it be made available to a user to override styling and LWC Lightning-based components? I think that's what the question is trying to ask.
Yeah. So Deepak, it's a good question. It's actually one that we're having a bunch of internal discussions around. Actually, literally on Friday, I have a meeting about this. So yes, this is where if you look into styling hooks, this is our recommended path. So like when you say user, are you talking about your end user, like your consumer of like your LWC? Maybe you've set defaults as well as leverage the defaults of Lightning-based components, but you want the user to be able to modify them. Again, that's where I would go back to like what context are we in? And technically, yes, you can update the builder to then update those styling hooks. So that's a long-winded way to say, if you all know about CSS custom properties, in Salesforce, we have styling hooks that are mapped to a lot of the things in Lightning-based components. If there are ones that you think are maybe missing, that's possibly worth surfacing. I don't believe that the Lightning-based components team is ever going to make them like straight up light DOM, where you can touch any DOM element, because that basically makes it so that they make it so it's not backwards compatible. So you should be leveraging styling hooks, and if there's a gap there, please, let us know. Again, file in the Trailblazer community, and I'll loop in the right base components folks.
All right, another question coming in from YouTube from Bodon, and it is, how does your current development roadmap incorporate adding support for non-Boolean conditions similar to how it functions in Aura?
This is a good one to take to the Trailblazer community because I don't know how to so I don't have anything concrete on the roadmap for this, so I can answer that, but I would want to know again more like what are the use cases that currently is in Aura that they're not able to achieve in LWC that requires this this condition similar. And I think maybe where this is maybe leaning is where we have the template expressions, where we get more complex expressions within LWC. So basically, rather than, I think basically, I'm going to riff for a second and say basically there's is true is false. It allows you to actually do complex JavaScript type expressions rather than jumping back out to your class. So again, feel free to, I'm riffing that it's technically in the works. They're working on more complex template expressions. But if that isn't what you're referring to, please file a thing, go over the use case. And again, like I said, we'll dogpile in there to figure out get an actual answer to your question.
All right. And let's move on to the next question. So I'm seeing that we're also coming up on time. So no worries. If you don't get to your question, please post your question to the Trailblazer community. It's a great time to call that out. And then we will try to get as many of them answered as possible on the Trailblazer community. But if we don't get to your question, please remember to post on the Trailblazer community, because I see that we're coming up on time here. So our next question that we'll be able to get to is Peter, from Peter. Any enhancement in the pipeline for the data table-based component?
I don't know necessarily what that means in the pipeline. I'm assuming that they mean, again, like, are they asking that the data table-based component is going to be improved? As noted earlier, yep. To be determined the release timelines by the base components team.
Yes, and that one came from Peter Gascoigne. So Peter, if you have any extra context that you could add to that question, that would be helpful, and maybe we might be able to get that answered for you. Our next question comes from Lindenberg Vinacio, and it's coming from LinkedIn. The client-side generation document from Salesforce Industries is based in a LWC, but is available just for Omni Studio or Salesforce Industries. This one's very specific.
So I don't really follow the question. It feels like they're saying, hey, technically part of Salesforce is able to do documentation generation. And so like, how can we like basically potentially re-leverage that for the earlier question of document generation? I think that's what this question is asking. So I can't really speak to that. It's a good like nudge, if we get to document generation to potentially re-leverage what is in Omni Studio and Salesforce Industries. So thanks for the insights there. Again, we haven't dug into designing and put that on the short-term roadmap for generic LWCs in general, but thanks for the heads up on that one.
And here's another one. Could the source for more complex components like file upload, look input, data table be released as open source? It's common for these components to need special features like restyling, but re-implementing the entire thing from scratch is challenging. And I know that was long, so if you need me to repeat that, let me know, Greg.
No. It's a good question, and like I'll pass this along too, because like I don't own any of the components, so it's one of those things. It's an interesting thing for each of the teams to kind of think about, because as you all know, opening up a open source repo comes with overhead itself, like people filing issues, maybe wanting to do pull requests, those types of things. But I think it's an interesting question to be asked, and like do it in a manageable way. Second to that, I do know that there are interesting efforts like being explored, very exploratory, to make it so that like what you're outlining there doesn't have to occur, so that they are extensible and restylable. I do know the SDS team is doing a workshop next week at TDX for this very thing of, hey, I want to increase my styling and extensibility of components that are built in. So I highly recommend joining that if you're able to.
Okay. And there's one last final question that I'm going to squeeze in here from Chandler Anderson. Are there any plans to expose the record from LWCs as open source components? Again, they are not included in Lightning-based components, and the base components recipes repo is archived.
Yeah, I think this is the same answer as prior before, which is it's kind of like, because there's numerous teams that own different components based on what it's primarily serving to the company. And so, I think that's up to them to determine whether or not they would surface. But again, this raises an interesting question of like a kind of Salesforce-wide discussion on potentially making that code available. Whether or not it's an open source repo is the thing that I'm kind of surfacing, like whether or not that's the best path forward. But interesting thought.
Awesome. So we had an amazing turnout for today's live stream. So we still have some more questions in there. I'm so sorry, but we've run out of time, so we can't answer them. But remember, as Christy is saying in the chat, to post those to our dev community so that we can go to our dev community and get those questions answered. Christy has posted it a few times what the links are in the chat. So just look in the chat here. She's posting them again for you and all of the resources. I do have a call out. Remember to take the 2024 LWC survey, and you can scan that QR code in the top left up there for the 2024 LWC survey. And also you can also do this as well, but our faces might be in the way. No, that's not what I wanted to do. So if you're having a hard time accessing that QR code behind our pretty faces, you can always access the QR code in the top left. If you want to know what happened on vacation, well, I guess you'll just have to come to DX to ask me. I love this. It's a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
If you want to know what happened, you can connect with me. I'll be at Trailblazer DX as well, doing a couple talks on Data Cloud, but also just roaming around the Trailblazer forest and roaming around Platform Park as well at Trailblazer DX. And I want to give a warm thank you to our expert, Greg Whitworth. Thank you, Greg, so much for joining us. And a warm thank you
for having me.
Yes. And of course, we're going to have you back. You're one of our favorites, Greg. Honorary developer advocate on this team. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in today, also on YouTube and LinkedIn. Again, we will post this on both LinkedIn and YouTube for you to go back and rewatch this. And thank you so much for working through me with my internet. My internet has been pristine. I don't know what's going on today, but that's just how it goes. right?
Yeah, it was fun. Made it entertaining.
Right. So thank you, everyone. And we are going to leave you with some of that awesome music that Greg was talking about to jam out to. Bye, developers.
Bye.